News Central now begins this hour in Nigeria, where the Supreme Court has declared that it is unconstitutional for state governors to hold onto funds meant for local government administrations. In its lead judgment, read by Justice Emmanuel, the Apex Court observed that the refusal of the state government on financial autonomy for local governments has gone on for over 2 decades. He said local governments have since stopped receiving the money meant for them from the state governors who act in their stead. Justice Ejim noted that the 774 local government councils in the country should manage their funds themselves. He dismissed the plenary objections of the defendants' state governors. The Apex Court consequently directed that local government allocation from the Federation account should be paid directly to them henceforth. Meanwhile, James Ibori has faulted the Supreme Court's judgment on local government autonomy. According to Ibori, the Supreme Court's ruling undermines the principle of federalism as outlined in Section 162(3) of the 1999 Constitution, which mandates the distribution of funds from the Federation account among federal, state, and local governments. He adds that Section 6 requires states maintain a state joint local government account for these allocations. The former governor is of the opinion that this decision challenges true federalism by allowing federal interference in local government administration, a domain traditionally reserved for state control. Ibori stated the implications are significant and wants the decision reviewed to uphold federalism. And so on that effect, we would like to have a conversation to indicate or talk about the implications of this ruling. And to do that, I'm being joined by a legal practitioner, Barrister Joe Nwokedi. Barrister, many thanks for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Let's get started. We've seen critics and also people who's voiced for and against this ruling. But what's your take on it? How would this ruling impact the ability of local governments to generate revenue and become financially sustainable in the long term?
It's a very commendable, judgment from the apex courts. The Supreme Court. It's one judgment that people actually, have their belief and kind of dedication to rule of law monumentally revived, because it has always been the Supreme Court will always give judgments. I don't want to say that will be contrary to people's expectations, or that will usher in a kind of revolutionary development that will touch at the lives of the people. But this particular judgment, they were able to come up with a decision that will usher in something very, very fundamental towards the grassroots developments in Nigeria. Like what you rightly said about former governor of Delta State criticizing the judgment of the Supreme Court. Anyway, he's not a lawyer. He's not a lawyer to know what constituted the bulk of evidence and everything and arguments that transpired at Apex Court that made the court to arrive at that decision. He was also a party. So for me, for a Supreme Court to look at the issues canvassed before the court,
right,
look at arguments of the lawyers and come up with that decision that will now enable the local governments to become viable, to become
Barrister Nwokedi, I hate to cut you, but he talked about the implications, and he said that the implications are significant and he wants the decision reviewed to uphold federalism. And when we think about federalism in and of itself, with this ruling, let's look at the political implications of this ruling for state governors and their relationships with local government officials.
Local government is not an execution of the state government. We have 3 tiers of government. We have the federal government at the center, we have the state governments, and we have the local governments. They are to have a certain level of autonomy, a certain level of independence, and a certain level of capacity to execute their projects, take care of issues surrounding their own defined territories, and then exercise authority as enshrined in the Constitution. They are not an annexation of the state government. State government, for over the years, have actually been muzzling the powers of the local governments, and it has, by so doing, deprived the masses, the real people that ought to benefit from local government. that opportunity of filling government at the grassroots. They don't spend the money, accruing into the account, from federation account for them. The state governments would find a way to meddle with the money, confiscate the money, seize the money, hold on to the money, and begin to give them as they wish. They dissolve them at will. They form caretaker committees and put people they want at local government to do whatever they like. So at a point, local government are supposed to be an independent arm of the government at the state level, just like the way the state government is independent of the government at the center. That suddenly became an extension of the state governments. And now you look at what certain developments that also come to the people, like culverts, like filling of potholes, like certain things, all these minor issues, like street roads and all these things. They fall within the constitutional powers of the local government to do. But you don't see them doing that. Refuse, some certain medical health care, so many things that local government, we call it county in UK, do, within the people inhabiting that local government. We don't see them happening here because they are incapacitated. They are stifled of their powers to exercise all these constitutional powers enshrined in the Constitution and conferred on them. So now what the governors now do, they muzzle their funds. You see some of them conducting the election at the tail end of their administration. And then we'll be blaming the local government. We don't even have a local government in Nigeria. What we have are like some of them, when they even pay them, they pay them money in papers, and in the real sense, they deduct money from what they pay them.
Now, let me ask about...
So it's a commendable development.
Commendable,
yes.
As you said. But how would this decision affect the distribution of power and resources between state and local governments in the future? I know we've said they need this, local government need this in enacting, projects and making sure that local government or their constituencies are being covered in terms of infrastructure and developments and all daring. But we've also seen that even at state level and federal level, there's still a lot that needs to be done. Would this in any way aid in resources or aid in infrastructural development, or would this,
retard it? No, for me to aid. Now people will be like holding the local government chairman accountable. I know for a fact that issues came up in one platform where I'm also a member regarding the inability of the chairman of that local government to take care of certain projects. People actually had their shops burnt down and things like that in the local community. They beckoned on the local government chairman to come to their aid. Of course, he couldn't do anything. He was like, well, there was no money, earmarked for this. And state government couldn't come to do that because one that took place in a remote village, that shops within a place got burnt. The government will have come to their aid, at least rebuild the shop for them, or at least come to do something to show that this is government at the grassroots. The state government is so big to take care of those issues at that level. But what they do now, they muzzle the funds that are supposed to accrue to local governments to do all these things. Now, politically, it is a welcome development because now we can hold local governments accountable. We know the amount of money accruable to each local government. We can now go to them to demand accountability. What are they using these monies to do? What projects have they executed? What have they done? Like old people people above 80, they're supposed to be giving them some grants. But they don't do all these things. They don't even, database of people within the local communities, and it will even cure this issue of insecurity and the rest of them. Because local government will be able to guide the people, have money to take care of people, have money to have data of the people, have money to know the needs of the people, and all these things. States don't do that. Before you attract a commissioner of a state to your local community, you know what it will take you? For a commissioner to come down to look at something, before governor will now become aware of that. Let them give the local government powers. Let us now hold them accountable, know the amount of money accruing to them, then call for accountability and all that. So then the local government will, because they generate now, let them be elected. So their sovereignty will also come from the people. It's not being like, you make them as a stooge.
Right.
I know when we were growing up, it wasn't that way.
Right.
I knew so many things that local governments were able to do at that point in time. But now it has been, it's like almost an appointed position. The governor can decide at any time, dissolve it, and then appoint other people, dissolve it. Some of them will have a project. I know one of them that had a project that he was executing, very, very commendable, touching the lives of the people. Before you know it, governor dissolved the whole local government. Okay. And then that guy couldn't come back. A situation where a local government cannot even determine how long he will last in office. It's very laughable.
Yeah, Barrister, but I have to let you go. But thank you so much for doing this with us. We appreciate you for doing this. Barrister Joe Nwokedi is a legal practitioner. Well, moving away from that, but still on judicial matters, the Community Court of Justice, ECOWAS, has ruled that the Federal Republic of Nigeria violated the human rights of Obianuju Ude and two others. The court found Nigeria in breach of Articles 1, 4, 6, 9, 10, and 11 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, specifically on the right to right to life, security of persons, freedom of expression, assembly and association, prohibition of torture, and the duty of the state to investigate and the right to effective remedy. The applicants, Obianuju Ude, Perpetual Kamsi, and Dabira Oluwa Adeyinka, alleged that these violations occurred during the peaceful protest at the Lekki toll gate in Lagos State on October 20th and 21st, 2020. The presiding judge, Justice Kuroma Soge, who delivered the judgment, dismissed the allegation that the right to life as guaranteed under Article 4 of the ACPHR is violated. He, however, said that the federal government must pay each applicant 2 million naira as compensation for violations of their security of person, prohibition of torture and cruel, inhumane and degradation treatment, rights to freedom of expression, assembly and association, duty to investigate human rights violations, and right to effective remedy. And earlier, we're joined by a legal practitioner, Henry Aken. Here's what he had to say about it. Take a look.
In the consideration that particularly the NSAS protest, which has appeared to suffer real legal and constitutional consideration in Nigeria, has been given some sort of legal interpretation for the protection of the rights of those protesters that were violated. Secondly, it's very significant to also send a signal to the Nigerian state that the issue of the protection of rights of citizens and the fundamental duty of states to protect the rights of citizens on all the international human rights instruments that we have ratified is something we cannot undermine. And again, it also expands, and that's very interesting for me when I read the considerations of the court. It also expands the spectrum of the fundamental rights that are valuable for citizens beyond the provisions under Chapter 4 of our Constitution, to the extent that you could even talk about the right to investigate or the duty of state to investigate alleged violation of rights. And when the Nigerian state fails to do so, the courts, the Community Court of Justice can come clear to insist that the Nigerian state, as a state party and then as a signatory to the protocol.
The federal government is nearing an agreement on a new national minimum wage as President Bola Tinubu has invited the organized labor, including the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, to a meeting at the Aso Villa today. Now, the president is expected to make a decision on the 62,000 naira proposal from the government and private sector, as well as the 250,000 naira demand from the organized labor. This meeting comes about a month after President Tinubu announced in his Democracy Day speech on June 12, 2024, that an executive bill on the new national minimum wage for workers would soon be sent to the National Assembly for passage. Several experts in Nigeria have called for an outright review of the adoption of genetically modified organisms and their role in the food and agricultural sector, saying there is scientific evidence of its detrimental effects to the health of humans. Now, this was as they converged on the nation's capital, Abuja, to engage and share knowledge and raise concerns surrounding the adoption of GMOs. Take a look.
The adoption of genetically modified organisms, also known as GMOs in Nigeria's agricultural sector, has been a subject of intense debate among health advocates and scientists in the country. With Nigeria being among 11 countries in Africa that has adopted GM crops like cotton, cowpea, maize, soya beans, and wheat, their acceptance has been shaped by worries about its health implications and its impact on the ecosystem.
It has been proven from research that we are sharing with you that these agents are promoting diabetes even in young children. Has it not baffled you? that today young people who are not even fat are going down with hypertension.
They will not come to say they want to do GMOs to know how to end floods or grass. It's usually genes of commercial interest. In Nigeria, it is cassava, it is...
They say a lot that there is insufficient research. But we're telling you today that there is more than sufficient information to establish the fact that these things need to be reviewed.
These experts converged on the nation's capital, Abuja, to give their perspective on the adoption of GM crops in Nigeria, saying the use of some imported toxic chemicals for farming should be interrogated.
Nigeria is one of the largest importers of pesticide use. The last data from 2020, we're using about 147,000 metric tons of pesticides in Nigeria. We've been doing this since God knows when. But have hunger reduced, not just in Nigeria, all over the world? Have these chemicals reduced hunger? The answer is no.
The accused agencies in the country saddled with the responsibility of regulation to have been compromised, insisting that citizens should be given the right to choose what they eat.
South Africa is one of the first countries that approved commercialized GMOs. They rejected this so-called telomeres, but they brought it to Nigeria. And I don't think NEMA, if I go and pose as a developer and apply for permit, NEMA will give it to me. They are just in random, I don't know if they think they are marketers instead of regulators, because they have not acted in the defense of our biodiversity.
They say they want the adoption of GMOs in the country to be interrogated, insisting that there is scientific evidence of its danger to the health and well-being of citizens.
Residents of Mudu Solumri, a densely populated community in Maiduguri Metropolitan Council in Nigeria's Borno State, is grappling with lack of healthcare facility and its severe consequences. Now, this has prompted an appeal to government and charitable individuals come to their aid. News Central's Umaru Kirawa went to the community and now reports.
Mudu community in Nigeria's state of Borno, predominantly agrarian with a rich cultural heritage, confronts formidable challenges in accessing essential medical services, impacting the well-being of its inhabitants. The lack of a hospital leaves residents vulnerable during emergencies, especially expectant mothers embarking on that journey of childbirth without adequate care.
Mu kashe kusan 700 800 irin su general irin su nasifan wannan kam yafi haka ma. To kaga wani mai karamin kwana, wani mai karamin wanda bai da kuɗi kuma yana dan tunanin yaya zai yi. To sai a dinga dan bada maganin gargajiya.
Kirma da bika bunyar ma kai kamula ganala suro isha zamzu isa uma lida ngurodun wa baraza moto manyen fandende nafe manye mafe magonyo luyana kamul makalala yen sombo. Ada suke gwamnati an godonyen marti gwamnati a kungiya gade an da bana jin mambe ma bana kala da manyan litari manyan.
Gaskiya muna da ma karancin makaranta har ga Allah. Muna da yara da yawa a cikin anguwa da ba sa makaranta, muna buƙatar mu ga an mana makaranta da kuma taimakon asibitin.
Duli man tora le zai wasu rongura den ganan zai duli kam duma mai umbe kuro halin zai na gadero raksu mashin biyazu walau aula biyazu sari amma ronguro den bero wallo no ma cewa man tidin bero wallo no ma kamla da dai zrak kuzari suka taranza na man tishin karango na sikin.
People of the community largely depend on local chemists and sometimes concoctions by herbalists, as faraway hospitals serves as final options when health conditions have become worse.
Ó ti lé ní 30 years àdúgbò yìí ti wà bọ́ àìní hospital àìní school àdúgbò yìí ó mú àdúgbò yìí ó mú fà sẹ́yìn púpọ̀. Abẹ́ àbúrò lọ́dọ̀ gómìnà àti gbogbo àwọn tí àṣẹ ń bẹ ní ọwọ́ wọn kan dákun kí wọ́n ṣàánú wa kan bá wa gbìyànjú rẹ̀.
Gwamnar askirnyana ngura da buran kanuba kullum kala kanulan ngin wahala ruyen gaido kaman da ya shiro kanasar ci isu nafsuna anjero kanu sukana ala bara suka shiro askirnyana mun jina wallon ma andero sai salimriya alan andero litari ganaja rayena.
The elderly and extremely ill face hardships in managing their health, often unable to access routine checkups or specialized care. This situation poses critical issues, especially during emergencies when timely medical intervention can be a matter of life and death.
We went to Bagani and also State Specialist Hospital, and that place is far away from us. Before getting there, some people may start bleeding, and from there so on, we may lose life.
As Modusulumri community continues to endure healthcare hardships, their call for a hospital comes as a critical necessity.
The hope of the people of Modusulumri community in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, is that the government will in no distant time establish a primary health center that will meet to their health needs. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Nigeria's National Security Advisor has inaugurated a National Security and Logistics Community, or committee, I beg your pardon, for the upcoming digital population and housing census in the country. The inauguration was done in collaboration with the National Population Commission in Abuja, where members of the committee were tasked to ensure adequate security and logistics arrangements during the census and ensure the safeguard of census personnel and materials, amongst other responsibilities. Martin Amaewhule reports.
The last census conducted in Nigeria was 18 years ago. This is against recommendations for the conduct of a national census by the United Nations, which stipulates every 10 years. While the National Population Commission has concluded plans for a nationwide digital population and housing census, an exercise that was supposed to have been carried out in April 2023, stakeholders say its importance cannot be overemphasized.
The need to provide the nation with accurate and reliable demographic data for policy formulation and planning for sustainable development cannot be overstated. It is in the light of this and the desire to bequeath an enduring legacy of evidence-based planning for sustainable development that the conduct of the national population and housing census is of topmost priority.
The National Population Commission says that preparations have been made, and the Commission is ready for a census in September this year, once approval has been given by the President.
We have about 600,000 enumeration areas in the country, and we also conducted first and second census pre-test to test the instruments and the maps that we've been able to develop from the demarcation exercise.
As the National Security Advisor inaugurated a National Security and Logistics Committee with members drawn from several agencies, he informed them of deliverables expected from the committee. The National Population Commission assured that they will receive maximum support.
I want to assure all members of the committee of the steadfast support from the Commission. We are ready to fully support the committee in all areas to make it succeed in its own assignment.
You have been carefully selected to add value as members of the National Population and Housing Census National Security and Logistics Committee. Paramount among your duties is the responsibility to ensure adequate security and logistic arrangements to safeguard census personnel and materials, as well as mobilize logistic resources for the census.
The National Population and Housing Census is expected to be Nigeria's first digital census. In Abuja for News Central, I am Martin Amaewhule.
The need for stakeholders to join hands together in a move to improve sustainable peace in any given society has been described as a move in the right direction. Now, this was the consensus at a two-day workshop for state actors and policy dialogue series on the security dynamics, solutions, and civil-military relationship in Plateau State. The training sought to initiate possible ways of fostering measures aimed at improving relationships between security personnel and communication where they inhabit in the cause of maintaining orderliness. News Central's Chizoba Anyonwe was there and now completes the report.
Team Foundation is a non-governmental organization. They put together this training
to brainstorm on issues of conflict resolution, causative agents, and ways of stemming them. These were major issues discussed by these stakeholders gathered under this roof from different spheres of life. Topping the two-day training were solutions for the way forward, while identifying major factors that threaten national security, democratic accountability of human rights, and periodic elections, among others.
Still a plan to need this kind of relationship because from time to time we have incidents of attacks in community. From time to time we have incidents of uniformed persons going to raid a place because they think they are suspect. And so all of these need to come with enhanced relationship to avoid picking the wrong persons, to avoid killing wrong persons, to avoid injuring people that ordinarily shouldn't be injured.
Bringing both parties together through dialogue and discuss areas where there are disparities and where there are gaps, and understand the doctrines and the culture, and find a way to work together as a harmonious approach to stability.
If this exercise was useful, then stakeholders who served as participants here would ensure they take home necessary tools for the betterment of society.
We need to be open with one another and force the humanity in us should supersede any other thing. We should look at ourselves as human before we think of being either a Yoruba or a Hausa man or an Igbo man. Once we look at the humanity in us, we are going to work hand in hand and things will move peacefully for us in Nigeria.
We look forward for more collaboration and for more programs like this, because we are open to learning. As long as you do, we have to keep learning. And what they always come up with, like this research, result of this research has really shown that they are doing a fantastic job. And by God's grace, as we go back to our various organizations, we are going to implement that, and we will have better working relationships and we'll be able to do our job better.
These underscore the essence and the need for civil-military relationship if sustainable peace will be achieved, especially on the plateau. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyuwi.
News Central now continues in West Africa, where Burkina Faso's military junta said it has adopted the draft of an amended family code that criminalizes homosexuality. Now, the West African nation has been among just 22 out of 54 countries on the continent that allow same-sex relations, which are punishable by death or lengthy prison terms in some states. Burkina Faso has been under military rule since 2 successive coups in 2022 and is part of a confederation with juntas in neighboring Mali and Niger. The law is to pass a parliamentary vote and then be signed into law by Torore. And on to West Africa, where Kenya's President William Ruto has dismissed most of his cabinet after deadly protests against his plan to raise more than $2 billion in new taxes. In an address to the nation on Thursday, Ruto retained his deputy and prime cabinet secretary. The move comes after he scrapped the plan to levy duties on everything from bread to diapers following protests that left at least 41 people dead.
On the measures I announced last week, barring state and public officers from engaging in harambes, I want to inform the country that the Public Fundraising Appeals Bill is now ready for publication tomorrow. However, even with the progress we have made, I am acutely aware that the people of Kenya have very high expectations of me. And they believe that this administration can undertake the most extensive transformation in our nation's history. Recent events that necessitated the withdrawal of the finance bill, which will require a review and reorganization of our budget and fiscal management, have brought us to an inflection point.
In the meantime, we'll move now to Central Africa, The Democratic Republic of Congo is said to have detected at least 25 mpox cases in Goma. Health authorities said at least 25 cases of a dangerous new strain of mpox spreading through DR Congo have been detected in the eastern city of Goma, mostly in camps housing people fleeing a surrounding conflict. Mpox, formerly called monkeypox, is a viral infection and can be deadly. DR Congo has seen 20,000 cases and more than 1,000 deaths from mpox, mainly among children, since the start of 2023. Authorities recently approved the use of vaccines to tackle the upsurge, but none are currently available outside of clinical trials in the country. And on to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Botswana, as they are collaborating on a major infrastructure project that includes upgrading the Barai Zimbabwe-Botswana railway system and constructing a new deep-water mineral port in southern Mozambique. The regional initiative promises to boost trade and economic development in the region, particularly in the mining and transportation sectors. It would allow the development of major coal reserves in landlocked Botswana and their transportation through Zimbabwe to ports in Mozambique. The project will also facilitate the transportation of Botswana's vast coal reserves, with the new port serving as a key export hub. Mozambican president said that further discussions between the three countries involved will take place in the coming weeks. And on to South Africa, over 230 babies have been born with HIV in Gauteng in the first 6 months of the year, despite the fact that drugs to stop the mother-to-child transmission of HIV have been available for over 25 years. 40 of those children were born in the Tshwane district. South Africa has one of the most remarkable public health successes of the last decade in Southern Africa, which has been the reduction in the number of babies born with HIV. This was achieved through the provision of antiretroviral therapy to pregnant and breastfeeding women living with HIV. However, a recent report has shown that this has decreased, with at least 30% of pregnant women in South Africa having HIV and their infants exposed to both HIV and antiretroviral drugs during pregnancy and breastfeeding. And still staying in the region, South Africa's Western Cape Education Department has ordered dozens of schools across the city and other parts of the province to close because of severe weather warnings. Now, several areas of Cape Town were flooded on Thursday after heavy winter rains and gale force winds battered the city, ripping off roofs from homes and damaging thousands of makeshift dwellings. The city's Disaster Operations Center said informal settlements around the city, including the major township of Kealachisha, had been particularly affected by the flooding. Several roads, including major highways, were flooded, and there were concerns about rising water levels at dams.
It was like this lull in the air, almost like the calm before the storm. It went really quiet, and then all of a sudden it just felt like this. And then I looked up and there was no roof. So it was hectic. So I just feel this strong wind. That wind was very strong. That wind was very strong, but I'm telling you, I never saw something like that in my life. It's very, very strong. And they just take the roof and everything.
And now for business, we shift our focus to the Nigerian telecom industry, where contracting trends have emerged. In the first quarter of 2024, there has been a notable surge in foreign investment FDIs. However, major players in the industry are grappling with financial losses and concerns loom over escalating costs and a challenging regulatory landscape. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, portfolio investment took the lead, accounting for 61.48% of total capital importation, with a value of $2 billion. Other investment followed closely at $1.2 billion, representing 34.99%. Foreign direct investment recorded the smallest share at $119.18 million, making up 3.53% of total capital importation in Q1 of 2024. Musa Obed, a microeconomics analyst, shed light on this phenomena as a guest on the Business Edge show. Take a look.
These are FDI investments, and just by the nature of, foreign direct investments, it means that particular, investors from abroad invested in specific telecoms companies within Nigeria. And you might be asking, just to get an understand, why is there so much investment, right, compared to the previous periods, like Q1 of last year? And it's quite simple. The government has had certain initiatives, certain plans that I wanted to promote for the telecom sector, one of which is the Nigerian National Broadband Plan, and that's the NPB for 2025. And there's also the special purpose vehicle that the federal government has issued, whereby it wants to add 900 kilometers of fiber optic cable for that particular sector. So we see that, this is backed by, an announcement by government whereby it wants to support and ensure that more Nigerians are connected.
In preparation for the 2024 World Kickball competition in November, a qualifiers game has been flagged off in Abia State, southeast Nigeria. The aim, according to the chairman of the local organizing committee and vice president of the Kickball Federation, Ndudim, is to discover talents that will represent Nigeria in the tournament. News Center's Chinwe Ugeli reports. We'd have to bring this package for you later on in our subsequent bulletin, and that will be at 6 p.m. But that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. Supreme Court declares it's unconstitutional for governors to hold local government funds. President Tinubu seeks way out of new minimum wage issue, invites labor leaders for talks. Kenya President Ruto dismisses almost entire cabinet after protests. Now remember that you can send us your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number now showing on your screen. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Judith, Atibi.